I love coming after Liliana because I feel like we can give you the whole globe together. And she spoke about Rwanda, which is very heavy, right? And we all know what happened and the heaviness of that. And I'm going to share with you what's happening right here in America, but I'm not going to leave you there. So we're going to go here, and then we're going to transition up, and I'll leave you in a place of hope. Because it's hard to hear sometimes, right? It's so hard to hear. But so I'll do it, as she said, in sharing our stories. I'm just going to share my story with you. And it's interesting how things unfold, and I hope it prompts you and inspires something of your own story. It was about a little more than a decade ago that I moved from Chicago to Florida, and I had one intention with that move. It was to do nothing. My goal was to do nothing. I had been overworked, over-volunteering, over everything, and really probably doing it out of the wrong place. And we had a vacation home in Florida, and we were just going to sort of relaunch. And I was down there for about a year, did nothing for about a year, sort of resting, trying to not do anything that I wasn't called to do. And because of a series of events, I got involved in a women's event that literally was just supposed to be a beautiful one-time event. It was called Spiritual Spa and Leadership Refresh for people to really slow down, sort of like this: come, pause, rest, take care of yourself. And we just wanted to find a little underdog charity. I had just moved to the Sarasota area. And as I started asking, what is it that we could bring to the light? I don't want something that everyone knows about. What's like the underdog thing happening? So back in 2010, I was told, well, our local children are being sold for sex. I'm like, what? Because I know like the story you just heard, right? And I know India, and I know Cambodia, and I know Mexico maybe, but I had just moved to Longboat Key, Sarasota, Siesta Key. And I came from Chicago, where we know what we are too, shooting capital. And I said, what do you mean your local children are being sold for sex? And that is what unfolded what became this whole decade of my journey, because then what they told me hit me in my deepest place. I was told that in America, it looks very different. And everybody thinks it's over there only, but here, what we have is based on secrets. And in America, our greatest secret, one of our greatest secrets, is what's happening in childhood. And the stats tell us that 1 out of 3 little girls and 1 of 5 little boys are keeping the secret of childhood sexual abuse. And that when a child is sexually abused, starting usually it's like 3, 4, 5 years old by somebody they know, they're supposed to trust, they're supposed to be their safe person, and there's a betrayal, but it's still blended with love, right? So that secret and that confusion causes a child's world to just, and this for me, I got my master's in clinical psych over 20-some years ago, and I'm a victim of childhood sexual abuse myself, and I would work with people from the south side of Chicago to affluent housewives, and it would all manifest in different things, maybe different addictions, but there was this root. So when I was told that, I was like, no. That's the root of this. And then what they said is that by 12 to 14, a chronically abused kid, something will snap and they'll run away. And once they hit the streets in America, in any zip code, within 48 hours, 85% of our own kids running from the most horrific situations at home, within 48 hours, 85% of them will be approached by a predator. And he will literally just have to say to them, are you hungry? Do you need a place to stay? In our program, we literally have worked with thousands of girls. And the youngest said it was when she was 11 that she ran away. And she said, whatever is on the streets has got to be better than what happens in my bedroom every night with my dad and my brothers. And she ran. It was a normal suburb. You guys would not have expected this little girl to have come running into the streets and running into what she ran into, but she ran. And they will say that the first thing that will approach a girl will be, they'll call him either a Romeo pimp or a gorilla pimp. So her first guy, within the 48 hours, she said it was like a 50-year-old man. He said, I'll give you $10 to have sex with me. She's like, he's not my dad? I could buy McDonald's? This is great. Think of an 11-year-old mind that has been groomed for that. You know, I have a book that came out called Groomed, and we all have been groomed to being conditioned to different things. She's like, this is great. Her next guy was her gorilla pimp. Once a guy gets one of our children, any zip code in America, they are then sold 15 to 40 times a day typically for 7 years. And this is happening every day, everywhere, and we are all like eyes wide shut. So the last decade of my life, what my quest to do nothing, as I uncovered this, I was like, oh my gosh, who do we write a check to? Just wanted to write a check. And there was no one. And 2 people that were also part of this committee for this event, they're like, this is our calling. We're supposed to give them a home. And over the last decade, we have built the most beautiful program for our own American children. And the reason I love it is because it could be your child, my child. They look just like all of us in this room because they're from every zip code. And they come in, and we do housing at 18, and they don't have their high school diplomas. They've been on the streets since they were 12. They've been told they're stupid, they can't learn. And what happens is they come to us, and we tell them, that's not true. And they stay with us 1 to 3 years, they get everything back. So it's like restoring a childhood. So actually, here in America, it's the most hopeful situation. We just need an awakening. We need people to wake up to it, because these little girls will come in, and they may have been left for dead in a garbage bag. Some of them have been scalped for trying to keep money, and they don't even know how to dream. But the beautiful thing and the resiliency is that they can learn. And we have worked with thousands, and our rate of success is 75% do not return to the street because they finally have a place to undo and unwind and have their trauma reset and believe in themselves, and they launch. And so we are rebirthing, giving children back everything that was stolen and walking them into that beautiful freedom. But along that journey, I was building curriculum, and as I said, I had my master's degree 20-some years ago, and as we were starting it and going around the country learning best practices and taking the best practices and seeing if you could do anything more with it, it grew into a prevention program for kindergarten through 12th graders, because if you could help them learn what the difference is between a secret and a surprise, they learn not to keep secrets. No adult needs you to keep secrets. So you get in there and you start unpacking that. And then before you know it, you train law enforcement, they know what they're looking at, and we're creating something that could change and could eventually help us not need these safe homes. But as I was in there and creating this curriculum and working with the girls and leading groups, I'm leading groups on sexual abuse, codependency back in the beginning, and boundaries. As I would listen to their stories, I saw myself. And I'm like, she may have been sold. All the girls said 20 was my number. Usually 20 times a day I was sold, had to do something. But as she shared, she was not much different than me. She talked about her childhood and the secrets that she kept and how she made this choice and that choice. It sort of stirred up in me like, I've made some choices and I've made some decisions. And the way they talked about their relationships, I'm like, I think I'm in a relationship like that. And I had realized that in my own childhood, I had lost my sister when I was little. I had been sexually abused by a friend of the family. I had been raped. And I just kept enduring, and I kept it inside, and I kept enduring. And watching these girls, I learned that I didn't have to keep these secrets anymore. And even though I had dealt with them on many levels, there was pieces in me. And I was asked at the time, I had an agent that was working with me. He said, will you write this book, Simon & Schuster, Random House, they're asking. And I happened to be going through a horrific divorce. And I'm like, I can't write a book. My brain is so figuring everything out. I've done all my life, all this work to try to be better, and here I am bringing healing. And it opens my eyes to the fact that, you know what? I still need so many layers. We always need different layers of healing. And as I sat there and listened to their stories and listened to them say what they did in this situation, I'm like, I've done that. And then at each location we have about 400 volunteers that works with the survivors. And they would come after they spent time with the girls and say, Elizabeth, I've never told anybody, but when I sat there today, it brought this up in me. And I recalled some parts of myself that I haven't thought about. Can I talk to you about it? And all of a sudden, I'm becoming this confessional, and people are coming and they're sharing and they're telling, but they're getting this freedom. Because I think what we need to realize, and what excites me about being here, is that we're all looking for something, right? We all want more. And there is more. If we ever reach a point that we don't believe there's more, I think something's gotten turned off in us. And I think the most beautiful thing is, as people would come and they would share, I would tell them, because I think they were afraid. They're like, I've never told anyone before. One woman just last week, she said, I've never told anyone. And she went on to tell me about some of the things her dad would do. And I just stayed there. And I think staying with somebody, and I'm like, that's all right. I said, you know how many people have endured that? And she cried. And it gave her permission that she was okay. And I think that is the biggest way that some of us are still being robbed and having our full purpose and passion stolen. Because what we go into in Selah Freedom and in the book is how we walk into a period of Selah. And I love that you guys sat in a Selah right before I came out, because Selah is to pause, to rest, to reflect. And what I'm hoping that you'll do with me is take a moment, because I think each one of us has something in us. How many of you have heard 2020? This is the season of clarity. Everything's coming into focus. This is it. We're about to come to this next level. And I think I think each one of us is being invited to the next level of freedom. But sometimes to go forward, you take a bit of a pause and you step back and you reflect. And so I believe that there's something in you, in each of you, that if you take a moment and you pause, and maybe just close your eyes right now and ask yourself, is there any secrets that I still have? Is there anything in me that if someone found out, they would never look at me the same? Is there shame? And if you can get an instant, think of a story, think of something that happened. Maybe you were very young. Maybe it's something that wasn't so long ago, but you can't let it go. There's a reason it's sticking. I invite you to just ask, what if I were to bring all this power and all this love into that place? And a true advocate that could show me that there's purpose in that. I haven't worked it out yet, but there is. And then open your eyes and tell me if you can believe with me that the very thing, the very place that you went just now, I think that's part of the reason you're here today. The very, very purpose and the very thing within you that you feel, this one is one part of me. I might tell that part of my story, but I don't always tell that. I have seen that the very parts of our stories that we hold back have the greatest power to heal. For me, when I stepped into Selah, I was very comfortable talking about my sexual abuse. No problem, no problem, no problem. But when it got into the facts that, you know what, I endured some other things, and I allowed myself to be treated some other ways, and I had been groomed to allow this, that's when I realized there was more. So I invite you to take a Selah. Maybe you need to get the book. Maybe you need to find a place that you could just do your own pause and do work. There's resources in what I've written. But don't let this moment in this season go, because within you, there's an answer. And I have watched again and again and again people come to life with the very thing that they felt bullied, embarrassed, ashamed, stolen from, is a powerful place that if you get that healing in that place and in that moment, you are able to step into amazing and divine purpose. I always say that, Selah means to rest, to pause, to reflect. And if there's anything stirring in you, I ask you to just let it stir, let it come up, because there's only one you, and who you are is so unique. In your story and your power to be able to retell your story to somebody, maybe tonight you share some things you've never shared before and let somebody respond to you, because I believe that our greatest power is being free. Because the way that we have watched our girls at Selah, they don't walk in shame anymore. Some of them are 19 years old and they're sharing things I've watched 55-year-olds struggle to talk about from their childhood. And they have this boldness and this freedom, and it makes them attractive. And as I stand and I'm able to say, I know I had this happen to me, but it doesn't define who I am, and I share with them the crazy of my life, they're like, you don't look like that. I'm like, you won't either. But what excites me is that all of us, we're called, because this season, the world is so confusing. And I just pray that you will pause, take your Selah, and then step fully into your position. because it is vital. We're at a time right now where you are so needed. So I invite you to just take that step and take that challenge and take that chance. Thank you.